again. We have a panel discussion here, and we have three pretty accomplished panel members who actually don't need introduction, but I'm still going to introduce them. So I'll start with Subha. Subha is the CTO of at Wipro. She started her career at AOL, I think, long ago, and then worked through a few exemplary companies like Abbott, Fannie Mae, and was at PayPal and Walmart. And thanks for being here, Subha, and we'll discuss interesting stuff. And obviously, Wipro, as you guys know, is a large IT services provider, and so it would be interesting to hear from her about what they are about to do or doing with generative AI stuff. Next, we have Kira. She's the Chief Innovation Officer at RingCentral. Started at Ingress long back, I guess. Sorry, I looked at your LinkedIn profile. So. And then Scopus, I think, Octane with Tim and Epiphany. And then she's been, her background has been around marketing and customer focused, enterprise focus, and she's obviously got a lot of experience in this world. So would love to hear from her as well on what her thoughts and what they're doing with generative AI stuff. And then finally, we have Jonas, who's the head of product of AI and platform at Notion. I think many of us know Notion. I'm a customer of Notion, and I've used the AI feature recently. So yeah, it's exciting. So happy to have you guys here. I'll start with your sort of personal experiences with this whole generative AI. Maybe Kira, you can get started there. In the last 6 months, what has your sort of impression of this whole thing been? Right? How has it changed your views and both professionally and personally around what's happening in the world?
Like everybody, I think, was sort of swept by this wave of innovation and the way that I don't think there's a person in the room who hasn't gone to ChatGPT and said, what is this, right? Or, I want to reward this. Can you reward this for me? I'm sure there's not a person in the room. Well, let's just try this. Why don't you write an essay about Higuana and my best friend, which actually I did and came up with something very creative. So first of all, I think everybody that has spoken before me, we're all trying to digest it. I don't think we actually understand the implications or how we're all going to use it exactly. We just know that it seems very powerful in what it can put out. It seems also very creative in what it can put out, and you kind of got to control what it puts out and how do you take it out of there. I think it's a wide open canvas to some extent, and Rebecca and I were just looking during the break, like back in 1994, which is when I think, like even before Tim and I were starting a company, when we were still building sort of the first generation of CRM companies, it was kind of early days of, Yahoo started when, 95, something like that? Yeah. We were sort of thinking, well, that's kind of interesting. I'm just going to go search for something, right? And what does this thing come out? And sometimes it came out with something that made sense, and sometimes it came out with something that made zero sense, right? So I think we're kind of at that infant stage of it, except that internet actually took, like if you actually think about it, a long time to become widely adopted, and there are physical limitations to that, such as the speed of the network, such as compute power, et cetera, and just the general ability of people to comprehend how to work with new technologies and new infrastructure. I think we're going to accelerate here much, much faster.
Well, what was your sort of personal experience through all this last 6 months, I guess?
So I'll take a slightly different take. So I have a high schooler, senior. Do you need me to?
No, I'll just hold it for you.
And he is a geek at heart. and he's just got accepted to one of the engineering colleges, which means I'm a very relieved mother. So he one day calls me to his desk, he's playing around, and then he says, "Hey, look, this is how you write." Like, what do you mean? So the prompt was, write an article on da-da-da as Subha Tatavarti. And it started to write and created an article, like as if it were me, based on my published work from the last God knows how many years. So that was my experience, the first experience. And then said, "What else have you been doing?" "Oh, we just wrote this program. I took like 6 months as part of my ATCS, and then the whole thing was written in like 5 minutes. This is fantastic. I can start using." So that's my experience, and from a personal perspective. But from a work, like from just an enterprise perspective, I think we are seeing a lot of curiosity, because we are a technology services company, but we also develop technology. We are a very interesting business model. And a lot of our problems are both from a supply chain perspective, because we manage our supply chain to be able to be most optimal service providers for our customers, enterprise as well as consumer product companies. And then the curiosity from our customers is to A, whether we will be disrupted, B, how can I make sure that my top line and my bottom line is secure and increasing? And 3, how do I ensure that I'm ahead of my competitors so I can continue my advantage or I can gain advantage? So those are the 3 big things. And in fact, it's so hot right now that I've probably had multiple conversations just on this topic with our customer CXOs, trying to figure out exactly what should be their play.
Awesome, thank you. Jonas, and I think you were probably already in the middle of developing this when all this was happening, but stepping outside of your core development, what was your sort of reaction to this whole thing? I'm sure you technologically you were already aware of some of this.
Yes. So my background before Notion was in the search space, and I've been in the search space for a very long time. This is an area where AI and machine learning, more specifically as a more academic topic, was already making great progress. And so by way of generative AI, we've now, I guess, welcomed more and more people, especially in the mainstream, to this great revolution, right? And that's, for us at Notion, for example, as you're right, we were already in the middle of building things and then the chat GPTs. And we were still at the time talking about the DALL-Es and the more visual implementations of AI. And that was the first time where people could see with their own eyes kind of the magic of it in a way that felt real and felt very tangible. And as we were riding that wave, we were preparing for the release of what became Notion AI. And we released Notion AI in the alpha version before ChatGPT was even taking off. And so we kind of rode that wave a little bit, and we were one of the first products in the market that was already taking advantage of very similar technologies and putting it in front of people. And what became extremely clear is that people felt both the same amount of excitement as they did the kind of like I would say not necessarily a fear, but maybe wary a little bit of what the implications were. And I think we're seeing more and more as people are using it and seeing the value. We're seeing people getting more comfortable, but then asking the better questions around some of those fears, right? The ethics of it, the future impact, whether it's societal impacts, whether it's economic impacts and whatnot. And those are things that we've been thinking about for several years, but now that it's really kind of part of the lore, the current lore, I think now we can ask ourselves those questions as a group, as opposed to a bunch of academics behind closed doors, asking those sorts of questions with the biases and whatnot, which I think was an entirely fine and important first step. And now we were confronted with this very large kind of family table conversation together as humanity as a whole. And that's going to be a very hard question or a set of questions to answer. So for now, I think most of us here, as we're approaching building with AI, I think we're trying to be good custodians of the AI experience, good custodians of the technology, trying to present it in a positive light, making sure that we put a lot of the things in safeties in place, but it's far from perfect. So I think this is where I think when the big wave hit, my mind went to, okay, how do we spin this very positively as opposed to the fear mongering, which I think right now there's many threads of out in the market for sure.
Yeah. Absolutely, thank you. I think just following on to the previous question, about your experiences, coming back to your now professional and your companies, maybe Subha, you can talk about, have you started any initiatives to address this, and what sort of the time frame you're looking at in terms of when you should be ready to roll this out to your customers and partners and so on?
Yes, the short answer is yes.
Yeah, sure.
So as soon as it came out, I think the week one we started to. In fact, we have had a research project for the last 18 months on just around LLMs and this was mostly around code mix because of the nature of our business, because we operate in multiple geographies. We operate in 6 continents. How many continents are there? 5 continents. Regardless, many countries and 25 verticals. So which means that we have operations across. So it kind of was important for us to start, researching in this area. So there are multiple ways that we're looking at, and one is, as I said, how do we optimize our core operations? We are at the core of it. Our business model is supply chain. Supply of the best developers, architects, technologists, consultants to be able to solve for business problems. The second part of it is how are we going to implement and solve for our customers across the technology stack, at every layer of the stack, at the IaaS layer, PaaS layer, agnostic, data platforms and developer productivity tools layer, applications layer, and so on and so forth, the user experience layer. So that's the second side of things. The third area that we're looking at is on the business process side, all the processes that make up by using the tech stack for the business process, finance, HR, all these business processes. And the last category we're looking at is essentially how do you use what's the connect between the user interface and specific connect, right? Whether it is through visual connect, audio visual connect, text connect, images connect, eventually what happens then, that interface. So these are the 4 broad categories in which we are looking to see the applications. Specifically, the ones that I can talk about here and call out. In fact, one of your presentations gave me a little bit of warning signals, because one of the areas we have is a platform. We are trying to platformize what we do in terms of services. So it's a platform called Topcoder. Essentially, think of it as everything we do at Wipro, but platformizing it and seeing whether it can scale or not. It is beginning to start to scale a little bit, and it's an interesting area. And we're trying to incorporate ChatGPT to create, for instance, specific prompts to create challenges, which essentially these are tech challenges, right? For instance, you have a ring-fenced user story, which has clearly defined input parameters and output parameters and clearly defined constraints, which can then be launched as a challenge for the community. Topcoder is essentially a crowdsourcing platform. Community can work on. We've had many, many successful projects, but then how can we include ChatGPT to do that for our customers when we launch it for enterprises? Similarly, we are using it for specifically defining knowledge paths or training paths for our members. We have around 1.7 million members outside of Wipro, 260,000 Wipro employees, who then can use our training paths to kind of train themselves better, and then we then track their data. So there is that, these are specific concrete implementations that have been in flight for some time. But then there are these others where we interface with our enterprise customers, where we're doing other business process and technology stack work that we're beginning to start to explore. And I think it'll be exciting to kind of see where we land there.
Awesome. Will you also be training and hiring prompt engineers going forward?
I need to really understand what that is first, and unpack the prompt engineering part. But
sure. Yeah, I think that could be a big need for enterprises as they go into.
And we have a. I know Microsoft is not the favorite here in the room, but we do have a tie-up with Microsoft, and we're actually piloting Copilot, and we're doing a lot of other stuff too. So yeah.
Kira, RingCentral is a communications platform, and I'm sure there are some very interesting things that can be done with generative AI. What have you guys been thinking of or doing, and what's the timeline you're looking to sort of make it mainstream?
Right. So as a communication and collaboration platform solution, we're sitting on wealth of of conversations. I mean, that's what makes up what we do in any modality, whether it's video or phone or chat or like contact center agents. So actually, a year ago, before this hype, we announced what we called Meeting Insights. And it was really about generating summaries, action items, key points of the conversation, etc. And that was really built on a large language model. And the term generative AI wasn't that well known at that point. And so that evolved into part of our essentially a platform for us that now powers, we just announced something called RingSense, which is very similar to what you talked about, in many ways targeting first salespeople to basically help them be more efficient, respond faster, be coached, managers have more visibility, and then look at things like predictability of how these conversations will result in a better conversion. And then kind of learning from that. And then if you think about this, you apply this based on conversations and based on the sentiment that you derive from the conversations, based on lots of different parameters, the analysis, you then apply that to marketing people. You apply that to other knowledge workers. You apply that to frontline workers. You apply it to basically all any conversation that's out there that's using any kind of conversational medium or any kind of communication. And the more that you, the more conversation that you have, obviously you're learning, and the knowledge becomes very interesting for us as you become domain specific, as you train on very specific domains, and then and it gets validated, because if it's not helpful, then they won't use it. And we're seeing our customers like really looking forward to thinking, okay, well, how does it actually help me as an enterprise? Like, what do I do? Do I need to now hire different type of people in my call center, for example? Is that because I can train them faster? Is that because I can monitor them better? Is that because they can learn faster? These are all aspects of application. Essentially, these are all words around the power behind essentially deriving and taking knowledge to action in any type of the application that we do, but it's equally true to the businesses that who use us. And so we really think that anything that we do at this point, we open up our platform. You can go and sign up for APIs that essentially will give you some summary from your conversation, for example, which is the most simplistic example. And we really think that that is really the way that for us to empower our customers to take advantage of the platform and apply it in any scenario that they need to apply it. And we're going to learn from that. I mean, a lot of this is really going to come from learnings and the asks, and the best way to build a product is to learn from the customers, and we're actively all doing this. Now, everything that was said here about privacy, security, integrity of data, it's this thing, analyzing something and telling you something that's like it just made up. This is extremely important, and so I think I would caution everybody here to, like, I think Vivek, you talked about this. I think you talk about it, not to like basically apply technology at its face value, and it's sort of like you have to have domain or some control, large language model or your proprietary language model on top of the base language model, whichever mechanism it comes from. And then, Subha, to your point, of course, we as a company are looking at all the business processes and saying, well, what does it mean? Like, I don't need to use my old chat bot on my website. I can go implement a new one using either our technology or somebody else's technology. That doesn't matter. So I think we're going to be seeing disruption in every enterprise because everybody is now saying, oh my God, can I do this better?
Yep. Jonas, Notion already has some AI features built in. I've been using them, as I said. So I think the primary thing that you guys have already released is the whole content generation piece. To the extent you can share, are there other parts of, use cases that you guys are looking at to build more?
No, that's it. We're done. We're walking away from it. No, in fact, it's interesting because we came out with the generative piece, what we call AI Writer, which is really kind of a highly transactional AI platform. You ask for something, you're given something. You ask for edits, it will suggest edits. But it's not very ambient in many ways. It's highly transactional. Where we're headed with AI, and that shouldn't be a surprise to anyone here, is more ambient uses of AI. So that means taking what is currently an assistance tool that responds to questions and asks, and really turning it into a tool using AI, meaning that most of the time we're spending right now is teaching large language models and some of our own implementations how to use Notion. So we're not focusing so much on what it can output, but rather how it can understand what needs to happen at any point in time. I'll give you an example. You're working off of Slack or Microsoft Teams. I'm sorry if you're on Microsoft Teams side, and you're having a conversation with a coworker, and you're just debating a question, and then you're like, we should really start a document about this and whatnot. And without anyone asking, very ambiently, Notion AI is be like, hey, I happen to be in this channel. I'm happy to create this document for you, summarize everything that's happening, and also suggest maybe a few avenues for you to solve this. And I'm going to ping a few people that I know would probably be interested in this conversation as well. Right, so now we're talking about AI that is able to have a lot of agency in the decision making and the use of the tool. I can be looking at a project board that I have in Notion and ask AI, like, can you help me identify maybe some dependencies here? I'm seeing all those tasks happening all at once. I'm seeing all those teams coordinating. You as an AI have complete visibility across the entirety of the business because all of our organizational data exists in one place, and you know about the relationship between individuals. Are you able to flag to me the areas where we're most likely to encounter friction or there's most dependencies over time? This is something several human beings can do over time. They have to be deeply steeped in all of those projects. They need all that context, whereas ambiently, AI is able to make those decisions. And that's just one of many uses. We haven't really spoken at all about how large language models are going to start playing into information retrieval and knowledge management and all of these things. So I think there's quite a bit still to figure out. In many ways, we are doing exactly the thing that we did when the internet came around. We took a library of books, and the first thing we wanted to do on the internet was to directly design the same shelf system on the internet. And then we learned that wasn't super effective. Then came Amazon, and it felt like a little more like a native experience to the web, this brand new thing that we created. And then mobile devices came around. What did we decide to do? We repeated the same thing that we did 15 years prior and created yet again like a very skeuomorphic kind of approach to. And so I think that's what we're doing with AI right now. We're doing this whole pattern of taking the human behavior that feels comfortable and understand until we get familiarize ourselves with the technology, understand that we can remove a lot of those layers of kind of like human touch and really get to the bottom of what the power of the technology is in many ways. So very much looking forward to getting to that. I'm pretty sure if you ask anyone who had access to electricity in the early 1800s, what they would do with it, nobody would have said power a computer. I'm pretty sure they would have said like, I don't know, maybe we could light some maybe stronger candles. Unclear, right? Mm-hmm. So we're kind of at that stage right now in many ways.
Absolutely. Kira, if a customer comes to you and says, I want to use generative AI using your platform, what would you tell them? Like, how do you think enterprises should approach this from your perspective at this stage?
Well, I kind of talked a little bit about this, but sure, I mean, that'd be great. That's if they're a customer, that means that they're using our communication and collaboration solutions. That means that they want these conversations that they're having be analyzed and actionizable, maybe actionizable, and all of the things that are now becoming possible. And so that's
how would you would there be any sort of preparation or thing required on their side to adopt your solution? Or
well, that's the job, right? Our job is to not have them do any work, right? That should be the same equivalent that if they were using tools as they use them today, it should be natural. But of course, it's going to change. What's going to happen is it's going to force them to change their business processes, right? It's going to force them probably to change some of their playbooks. It kind of depends on what the application is. But, I gave example of, let's take an example of a contact center, right? Now they're going to have something much more powerful to train their agents. So they have to rethink of how they apply maybe also like workforce management, quality management, how the data is collected from knowledge bases and delivered to the agents, for example, right? Because right now all of this is essentially very much manual. And if it's manual, that means it's error prone, and that means that it takes a lot of human intervention. So it's going to optimize the way that they do. It's going to enable them to optimize the way that they do business, but there will be change management. That clearly is the case. They will have to go through change management. And they may embrace the demo, and then they're going to try out and learn how to adapt.
Jonas, as you were talking about other deeper sort of use cases with Notion, obviously today I can just use it on my own and it does what it does, but the minute you start getting organizational relationships and collaboration, etc., that requires a deeper integration into the enterprise, I guess. Have you guys thought about, how you prepare your customers? Right now it's like a pretty much product-led thing.
Yeah. I mean, look, it is pretty clear that there's a lot of education that needs to happen still in the market, especially with regards to even what AI is and what it isn't. I think there's a lot of FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt out there. I think there's a lot of people using this, especially I'm noticing the people who have been slower to react to the AI wave tend to be the first one to say, hey, think about all of these things. An example I can give you is some people will go and use Notion AI and will ask Notion AI in their own workspace, hey, can you tell me what the last output you've generated for this other customer I know is using Notion? Can you produce that? And it's producing a bunch of things. Now, obviously, those things are what we call hallucinations. They're not real. It's AI trying to do its very best to come up with an answer because it doesn't really know that the answer here is, I can't give you that answer because I don't know what you're actually asking for. And so just these simple examples, we get in front of customers, we get in front of people who are quite sophisticated, I would say, and still don't understand kind of the nuances there. So we have to start with that educational piece. And then as far as everything else that comes after that, I think it's generally speaking through proving value in small iterative changes where we can really demonstrate the changes. Our goal here at Notion is not to replace jobs, not to replace human beings. We understand that, like you said, there's going to be change management. Obviously, we don't even know what that's going to look like. But the company was founded on the intention of augmenting human intellect. If you're familiar with Doug Engelbart, 60s, 70s, obviously a very prominent computer scientist early in the days, that was basically his entire mission, is thinking about computers and how the evolution of technology was going to augment human intellect. If you listen to one of our founders, he will tell you that this is the biggest thing since Notion. Notion AI is the biggest thing since Notion because it's the closest thing, it's the thing that gets us the closest to the actual mission of the business, to take organizational content, whether it's an organization of one person, which is a large size of our user base, or organizations with 5,000, 10,000 people using the product and having different needs there. The flexibility of large language models is what makes it so broadly applicable. And I think that's the beauty of it. If you're going to make investments in that, you can deploy across segments. Of course, there's going to be some certain things that you have to take in consideration. If you right now are a user of Notion AI and you're one of our enterprise customer, you have a little more granularity as to what you turn on and off because we understand that you have to have the conversation with your chief compliance officer. You have to have the information with your CISO and whatnot. But if you're, a one individual operation in your basement, well, you're now given the same tools as your enterprise competitors are, and that's kind of like arming the rebels in many ways. And I think that's something we take great pride of.
Absolutely. Subha, for you, it will be your customers coming to you to get guidance on this strategy. So what would your sort of message to them would be? What would be the first few steps?
Yeah, I'm on the caution side. Explainability is a big thing for us, especially if you cannot trace where your outputs are coming, the reason and the logic behind it, it's a big red flag. Outside of Americas, our largest market is Europe. So Europe is heavy under in GDPR and regulatory and compliance, PI, PCI, all of that is very, very important. So for us, most of the conversations, at least for me, is anchored around that caution. And then I think somebody else talked about what happened in Italy as an example and what's happening in other parts of Europe. And usually Europe starts and then Americans lags, like kind of just follows suit. So we tend to go that route mostly. That does not mean we have no excitement for the technology itself and where we are headed. But I do believe that the explainability side is very big in what we do and how we converse with our customers and our enterprise customers. Second is essentially on value, because this is right now expensive. And most conversations we have realized that our customers don't really understand the cost very much. The excitement itself, they feel that suddenly they can drive down some of their customer service costs and others. So that's another angle we look at. And lastly, it's about the evolution, right? What's coming next, as you pointed out, right? How are you going to future-proof yourself constantly? So yeah, my take is slightly on the caution side.
Sure. Yeah, okay, just last question. What's your favorite generative AI use case outside of Notion?
I spend a lot of time on Midjourney. If you've tried Midjourney V5, it is mind-blowing. It gives me I honestly, like, I'll lay in bed at night and my partner will be just like sleeping next to me and I'm like, okay, so it's a cat, but it's also like an octopus and I'm just doing all that stuff. I will just say though, while it's my favorite use of generative AI, is also one of the uses that I found the scariest for the potential it has if it is used in the wrong hands, particularly as it relates to misinformation, propaganda. It can be used in ways that, as it gets better, and a year from now, it's going to be so much better than it already is. And we're going to get in a place where it's going to be very hard to tell the factual from the fake. And that is something we are going to have to react to. There's no putting that genie back in that bottle. So how do we go about educating people? Now is the time to really develop everyone's critical thinking. Can we use AI to actually develop people's critical thinking? That would be an interesting use of generative AI to do that. So exciting but scary at the same time.
That's good. I need that for my kids.
Subha, what's your
favorite use
case?
I'll do a caution first, just because that's a DNA, and then I'll talk about the favorite use case. The caution, it's interesting, going back to the very first thing I talked about when my son was exploring. Suddenly it was an aha moment, which is, oh my God, the next generation is going to be dumber than our generation.
Yeah.
Right, so it's because knowledge, suddenly you don't have to discover, you don't have to go and, read. Everything is on your fingertips. I don't even remember phone numbers anymore. I had fairly decent memory 20 years ago. I could do calculations, mathematical. I don't even do that anymore. So overall, I think that's unfortunate, but that's how I see. The favorite use case perhaps is probably writing. I'm not a very good writer. It's just personal, and I don't believe I write good emails. I don't write good documents. So I think this is going to be my best buddy.
Have you considered Notion for this?
I will.
I might have a coupon code for you.
Okay. And from an enterprise perspective, I think our biggest cost is around product market fit or data. So I've been to ChatGPT and you want to get market data or any data for what's happening, who are the players, what's the latest and greatest, tech, who are the latest startups. It was just like in 5 minutes. Product managers take like 4 months, 5 months to give us that data. So that's like kind of exactly like what I've experienced so far.
Yeah, how about you?
So like, I'll do two. One is I'm usually triple booked in meetings, so now I actually don't have to worry about missing a meeting. I can be late. I don't have to attend. I can go get the gist of what happened, and then the action items come out of this. So I don't even have to worry about that. So that's just like an everyday dilemma. But just for my personal use, look, I use it for editing. Anything that I write now, I just go and say, what will this thing say? Let me fit it what I put down. Let's see what it says. And what's interesting, it's not necessarily that I will cut and paste. I'll just have a different perspective of how to say the same thing,
Right.
but differently. And I think that's fascinating. So that it's very simple, but it just kind of broadens your think of like perception of what you're doing, like right away. Oh my, this is different. Okay, interesting. Yeah. Maybe I'll adopt a couple of words here.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. It was really great talking to you guys and hearing your perspective on various aspects of generative AI. Thanks a lot.